Of the three characters, Luocha, Blade, and Kafka, it may looks like Blade is the least desirable one of the three, because it's easy to just say he's just a DPS. Therefore, it's much more easier to replace a DPS. But I just think that's a misconception. It's so much easier to build Blade because since he scales of HP, you don't need to have like the perfect all attack oriented subsets and your relics. Does that make sense? It's like, do you know how many times you have to farm those relics day in, day after day, and then you get like some weird substats like HP and attack, and then more HP, and then like a crit damage or a crit rate. It's like you never get that perfect, like all offensive substats for your DPS. But in this case, Blade doesn't need all of the attack, crit damage, all that stuff. Like you still want some of those on him, but now there's an extra one that he can have on the subsets, and it won't just feel as bad. And that's HP, since he scales with HP. But he doesn't just scale with HP. He still does pretty well with attack because he attack with basic attack. So attack is still something that he'll want. It's much more easier for a free-to-play player who doesn't refresh his stamina to just farm out the relics. It'll take way less time to get Blade up and going versus like trying to get the perfect substats for Kafka or the perfect substats for Luocha or even the perfect substats for future DPS who needs all of the offensive substats. One other thing is Kafka needs other characters to do the whole damage over time team composition. That means other than building Kafka herself, you still have to build Luca and or slash Sampo and maybe even Hook. You have to build 2 or 3 characters maybe from the scratch up if you haven't started those characters, and there's just a lot of resource. We're already scratching pretty thin on the resource, and the fact that if you pull Kafka, it feels like you probably want to build a damage over time team just for her because that's what she is. Kafka is the gateway for damage over time teams. That makes her very future proof, but that also means if you want to do that team composition, you're going to need to fork out the resources for it. And you probably don't have that much resource. One other thing I want to talk about briefly is this misconception that DPS characters are not future-proof and that they're easily replaceable. And I don't think that's entirely true. Like, it's easier to say that, oh, DPS characters are easier to sell for MiHoYo, therefore they're gonna keep making DPS characters. But that's not the whole picture. The thing is, did you see the speed of which MiHoYo is releasing these characters? It's going to take like months, maybe even a year or two before another like win DPS character is gonna come out for Blade. And Blade isn't just filling the role of a singular DPS. He is so skill point efficient that he can be your secondary DPS. Because remember, he only needs to use 1 skill point every 3 turns. That's 1 skill point. Some other characters, some other DPS characters are using like a skill point at least once every turn. Some maybe more than once. Think about it this way. If you simplify the hardest content right now, which is MOC, is DPS. You might need some healing or shielding to stay alive, but if you don't have the damage check, you're not going to clear MOC. You can't outlive them because there's a turn limit. 2 of the conditions in MOC is that you have to clear MOC in a certain number of turns. You can't out-heal them or you can't out-shield them. It's not a war of attrition. Blade isn't like Kafka, who opens up a whole new playstyle. Nor is he Luocha, a healer that's needed in pretty much every single team composition. But what he does provide is that he is a skill point efficient damage dealer who can serve as a main DPS or a secondary DPS. At the end of the day, I'm never going to say something like you have to pull this character, because you really don't. Like, this game is a single player game at the end of the day. There's no PvP, you're not competing with anyone. Just go at it your own pace. If you like the character Blade, how he looks, you like his playstyle, then just pull for Blade. If you like Kafka because she has big boobs, then pull for Kafka.